Good evening, everyone. We're here for the December 6th, 2021 Audit Committee meeting. I'm RJ O'Leary. All of our board members and committee members are present. We have a pretty quick agenda to get through tonight, but we hadn't met in a while, and we hadn't heard from Francine, so I wanted to give her an opportunity to present the claims reports. So first thing on the agenda is review of the minutes from our October 4th meeting. So the minutes were included. If anyone has any questions or edits, please pass them along. Next up on the agenda is the review of the school lunch fund profit and loss for July through October. Robin, are you going to take that one?
I will take that one.
Thank you.
Okay, does everyone have the July through September up?
Yes, we do. It's included in the packet.
Right, there's just a couple of things I wanted to point out. Primarily in comparison to the July through September of 2020. You can see our revenues are extremely increased. And that's basically due to we're now allowed to sell other foods in the cafeteria. So not just the side day reimbursements, but we're also selling food. And the reimbursements are phenomenal. So the revenues are looking great at this point. Of course, expenditures will also go up because we're looking for the entire student body. Salaries are about what we expected with raises. Benefits are about the same, but food supply, because we're buying food to school and because produce has become super expensive, our expenditures are also up. And Paul wanted me to pass along that he's having some trouble getting some of the government surplus that we've actually ordered. They don't have it to send us, so that's been a bit of a challenge for him as well.
So Robin, in what categories? Like, are there certain categories of food that?
Well, the government surplus is a lot of meats and cheeses and the basics, and some of it just doesn't come through for him.
So what does he do if he doesn't?
Whatever he can.
Wow.
He's our magic chef.
I was going to say.
Paul's pretty crafty and creative and does an amazing job with what he gets in.
Yes. So that, let's see, the July through September period left the district with a loss of 18,000, but compared to 37 the prior year, much improved. And then if we go right on to October's P&L, in similar issues, we've got definitely increases in the other foods. Reimbursements are phenomenal. Still, net food purchases up for the same reasons, the increased student body and the fact that produce is just crazy. We're now at a gain of 11.6 for the month of October. We're only down 6,600 for the year at the end of October, compared to last year at almost 80,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, we're in good shape.
Pretty dramatic.
Any questions?
Now I got a question. The 6,600, you say we're down, is that the difference between the revenues of 150 and the expenditure of 156?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Please thank Paul.
I'm sorry?
I said, please thank Paul for it.
Oh, I will. I will.
Yeah, I mean, it really is quite the turnaround between last year and this year, so that's great.
Well, I think having all the kids back participate has helped us out significantly.
And also the federal government figuring out the reimbursement because they weren't up on it last year.
No, they were not.
So are those reimbursements coming through more timely? Good.
He's had a couple glitches with getting them in. The system was kind of screwy on their end, but he seems to be in a good spot now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Robin.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, great. Okay, Francine, next up is the claims auditor report.
Okay, okay. Seems like we had 16 exceptions. And here letters from the last meeting. Most of them are spread out through different departments. I think it's a good thing because not one department is taking a statement. Things I wanted to point out was students that go to other school districts and how the district office is made aware of that. They'll come in, I feel like sometimes that comes in and we're not quite aware of that type of expense coming in. So I don't know the process in how school districts are made aware of this. It can either be like a charter school within the public school where they get tuition, or it can also be where we pay health services for students that go to private schools in other districts. So that was one concern. And then another concern, which I believe we're looking at, is our mileage reimbursement policy 6831.
Right, that one, I'm trying to remember, did what did we do with the mileage reimbursement?
That's the one that we
just-
allowed to be able to have it go from point A to
Oh,
point B,
right,
instead of
okay,
having it be very
yes.
convoluted.
Yep,
And
got
that's
it.
part of the issue with it.
Okay, I think that's on the agenda for
Yes.
this evening, the mileage reimbursement rate. But then on the other issue you raised in terms of students attending schools, is it an issue with the timeliness of information and it's not being reported to you?
It's partially an issue that we aren't necessarily made aware until they send us that health and welfare bill. That's one part of it. The other part is with charter schools, they don't necessarily need to register with us. So they go to their charter school, if they aren't taking transportation, we won't know it until they send us a bill.
Okay,
So for both of the charter school placements that we had this year, they came essentially out of the woodwork. They gave us a third bill out of 6. And when they were supposed to do a first in June, a second in August, those kids weren't there, so they started in October. So,
and what are the charges for? I'm not
For
familiar-
charter?
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
there's a specific amount per student that the district has to pay. Basically, it's supposed to be equated to what we get from the state for that student.
Got it, okay,
Yeah, 14, 15,000
okay.
each child.
So we then receive that information, there's a billing schedule, and we're supposed to then pay the charter school, let's say.
Right, so the first bill came in, then we created a PO for the rest of the year. So this first bill is the only one that was on.
Got it. Yeah, I don't know how we solve that, except asking people to report the information to us timely, right?
How many students do we have that go to charter school?
Only 2.
But it's also the health and the health services that we pay for other students.
That's a smaller per student amount because it's the health services per student that a district provides over their entire population, including the private schools. So usually it works out to somewhere between $500 and $800 a kid. Since we don't have any private schools within our district, we don't bill out, so it's kind of like, okay, we get the bills in, we take care of it. It's one of these things that potentially we could fix with communication among the different districts, but they may not necessarily know they have a kid in the private school in their district that is a resident of Voorheesville. So it's all the way around, it's a big problem that I'm not sure has a good solution.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just a plain old communication problem, and the timeliness of the communication is
And we're on the receiving
tough to
end.
fix, right? Exactly.
Sometimes there's even questions about residency, right?
There are, yes, when we're sent the list, we have to go through and say, yes, this one's our resident, no, this one's not, and go through the whole process.
Okay.
We have children who are homeschooled.
Yes, we have children that are homeschooled. I gave a report in the beginning of the year, I don't know off the top of my head. We have less numbers this year than we had in previous years. We have roughly, I don't want to I don't remember the numbers I gave you already, but I believe it's like 10 to 12 kids and roughly from
14 is
6
like-
families.
Like it's down from 16.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a lot of families, and it's 6, and we do have some families that send in notes that say, as soon as COVID up, we'll be back, thank you so much, like, they're planning on returning, they just have chose not to at this point.
We have a financial obligation for schools.
No, but we don't have funding for those. So it pulls out of our round, so you wanna have, I mean, for our district, 12 to 14, 16, that's good. Some districts are 35 to 60 to 80, our size. So, yeah, so where it's in a better market, we want to keep those on.
It really is quite easy.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, any other questions on the claims reports from anybody? Thanks, Richie. Okay, the last item we have on the agenda is a review of the function level summary of expenses and encumbrances. So this is a report that Jim helped us develop last year to track our, what we budgeted against what we've expended and encumbered for a particular category of expenses. So, Jim, do you want to give us the highlights? Anything to point out?
Sure. So we have in the document, the last 3 columns are what we budgeted for the current year, what our expense up to today is, and what our expense plus encumbrance is. So basically, the expenses that we know we're going to have plus the expenses we already have. It's not an estimate of year end. There's always some things in there that we need to add in, but it's a reasonable approximation of where we are at the current period. So if you look, for example, I don't know, let's go to 2110. And you look across and you say, okay, so 7.9 million is what we budgeted, 2.1 is what we've expended so far. Yeah, we're about a third to about, closer to a third of the year gone. That seems reasonable. 7.2, 7.3 is what we have encumbered plus expense. So that's reasonable. We've got a little bit to work with. There's probably going to be expenses that we don't know about yet in there, including those tuition bills and health and welfare and things like that. So every single line you can go through and say, okay, where are we compared to budget as far as what we've expended and encumbered?
Yep, and then just looking at the bottom line, we're in good shape relative to, I think you had said before, we try and keep a cushion of
5%. Right?
5%, right? So we're even doing better than that.
Well, you have to consider that 1.1 million of that is federal, so that's taken out. So if you add that on, it's 24.7 versus 26.9. So we're right in that range.
All right, any questions on this report? No? Thanks, Jim. Thank you. All right, I think that wraps up our agenda for the evening. We'll be quick.
So Robin, this is your last meeting?
No, I'll be here in February.
Oh, you will be here in February?
Yeah,
When's your,
to the end of March,
then, okay.
but it's flying.
Yeah.
It's flying.
Great. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Artie.
Exactly on time.